Recently, a woman in Wisconsin ended the life of her boyfriend in one of the most gruesome, sadistic ways imaginable. Let's take a deep dive into not only the crime itself, but also her background in previous crimes, the very ingredients that make such a cold-hearted criminal. This is the story of a woman named Taylor Schabusiness. While going through this video, I'm going to be deep diving into her troubled childhood, the bad influences in her life, and what led her to going as quite as rock bottom as to be capable of something like this. By no means am I doing this to try to gather any sympathy for her or try to explain away that it wasn't exactly her fault. Rather, I just feel that it's always important to look at exactly what kind of perfect storm creates somebody like this. So, let's start back at the beginning. In November of 1997, a young couple named Marla and Arturo Coronado welcomed a new daughter into the world, Taylor Denise Coronado. Before too long, they had a son as well named AJ. While they seemed to be the quintessential regular family unit from the outside, they were dealing with their own problems behind closed doors. One of these problems was alcohol, which Marla was particularly fond of. Marla's problem flew out of control, giving her cirrhosis of the liver. Even so, she continued to drink. One night, when Taylor was 11 years old, the family was watching a movie when Arturo and Marla fell asleep. By the time Arturo woke up, Marla was gone. She was cold to the touch. While Taylor and AJ luckily didn't see their mother in this state, Taylor would never be the same after. The loss of her mother at such a young age changed her, and not for the better. Taylor, AJ, and Arturo were now living together in a duplex. AJ started playing with a friend in the neighborhood. Due to this, Arturo would meet an older female relative of that child, and he fell for her. Before too long, they were dating, and their families came to blend together. In 2011, the two families moved in together, and by 2012, Arturo was married to his new wife. Taylor, by this point, was quiet around the adults of the family, but she really opened up around other kids and became more energetic and outgoing. However, those close to her always felt that something was off about her demeanor and how she attempted to communicate love to her family. By the time Taylor entered into middle school, she was becoming what you might have called an alt kid. She was into the hobbies that would traditionally come with that scene, like metal and electronic music, but she also dabbled in nerdier content like anime and video games. In particular, she was big into Assassin's Creed and Halo, which she often played online. While she spent most of her time inside, either playing games or on the computer, she did get into skateboarding, often doing so with either her brother or her friends. In middle school, she met two new friends. One was a boy named AJ, not her brother, and another named Shad Thyrion. These two shared much of the same hobbies as her, and they would continue to hang out for quite some time. Taylor began to get a little more rebellious, or at least she liked to portray herself as so. She got more into the offensive brand of humor, often trying to get a shock value laugh out of those around her, and took a newfound interest in the darker, gorier side of life, something that might have foreshadowed things to come. The way Taylor acted at school and around her friends was fairly different from the way she acted at home. It was no secret to those around her that she was dealing with some pretty heavy mental health related problems. She was on and off of psychiatric medication for years, mainly medication to deal with depression and anxiety. She was mainly told to take Seroquel, but she hated the way it made her feel and often stopped taking it. She was given Adderall for her diagnosis of ADHD, but she had a similar experience with that medication as well. After a while, she even started getting checked into psychiatric hospitals from time to time, over time becoming more withdrawn and antisocial. She got quiet with her family and started to communicate with them less and less. Taylor never had moved on from her mom's death all those years ago. She had a hard time being happy with her current life as a teenager. She didn't like her blended family, and she had a bad relationship with both her father and her stepmother. This caused a lot of fighting within the home. Not all of that fighting was centered around Taylor though, as her father and stepmother spent a good amount of time fighting with and yelling at each other as well. On more than one or two occasions, the police were even called out to the home after these arguments got out of hand. It wasn't a peaceful, nurturing home by any means. Needless to say, Taylor wasn't necessarily in the sort of environment where she was going to get better mental health-wise. Not only was it almost entirely neglected, it was directly made worse. Over time, she got more cold, more distant, and more rebellious. By the time Taylor was in high school, she started running away frequently. Often, she'd be gone for days at a time. From time to time, the police would be called to help search for her. More often than not, she'd be staying over with a friend or whichever boy she was dating at the time. She usually never would come home of her own volition, having to be found by either her parents or the police before she would finally relent and go back. She was usually grounded because of these runaways. In her senior year, she was finally expelled from school for fighting with another student. Taylor began to tell others about her runaway stories, usually involving a lot of drugs and sex. While it's likely that she felt this made her sound cool, she had a sad undertone to her speech that made those around her pity her more than anything. As her relationship with her father and stepmother crumbled, she got into more and more arguments with them, leading to one final argument where Taylor would throw a metal candlestick at her stepmother in a rage. While nobody was hurt, it was decided that enough was enough. The family would send Taylor off to live with her grandparents in Texas. They were done dealing with her. In fact, they were afraid of her. Taylor moved from Wisconsin out to Texas, where she attended Cotulla High School. There, away from her parents, she actually did fairly well. She made friends, got a new boyfriend, and eventually graduated high school. But unfortunately, she would eventually move back to Wisconsin. She, however, would not go back to living with her parents. Her father, Arturo's problems didn't end with domestic violence or alcoholism. Arturo was a predator. Shortly after this time, Arturo was arrested for second-degree sexual assault of a child. His victim was a girl who was only 13 years old, who he attacked in her own bedroom. As a result, Arturo's wife filed for divorce a few weeks after his arrest. Despite his crime, Arturo was bailed out of jail and actually roamed free for quite a while. He would spend years switching lawyers, dragging things out, and doing his best to delay his trial for as long as possible. COVID became a blessing for him in this regard, dragging out his case even longer. To make things even more sad, Taylor revealed to a close relative that her father had sexually assaulted her as well when she was a child and expressed her intentions to open her own case against him, especially now that his perversion was no longer a secret. This shed some light on her increasing depression in her early years and her sudden rebellious attitude. After a short while, though, Taylor decided to close the case she had opened against her father. Around this time, she had gotten more into drugs, harder drugs, and she could barely afford to live, let alone deal with legal fees. During this time, it's an unfortunate reality that Taylor would come to hang out with her father occasionally once more. It's likely that she simply needed a place to live. On Valentine's Day in 2020, Taylor married a man that she had been dating, a man named Schabusiness. Her husband was a part of the bad, drug-related crowd that she had come to be a part of herself. He was in and out of jail continuously, bringing even more trouble her way. On June 21st of 2020, Taylor got into her first big scuffle with the law, getting her first felony arrest under her belt. While she had been doing reasonably well, working a solid job and getting her bills paid, her husband really kept the drugs flowing and Taylor was more than happy to take them. On that day, Taylor was on said drugs, walking around her neighborhood high out of her mind, knocking on neighbors' doors and getting them pretty shook. These neighbors called the police, who came out to perform a welfare check on her. When an officer approached Taylor, she responded with, "Why do I have to stop for you?" Not understanding, the officer came closer to her and asked her what was going on. Taylor told the officer that she had just shot up earlier in the day, showing him her track marks and explained that she was on a different planet right now. While she was surprisingly calm and honest, that all changed when another officer arrived on scene. She began to get argumentative with the police officers before turning to walk away into oncoming traffic. The officers pulled her away and began to take down her info. She proceeded to ask stranger questions like, "Are you taking a shit?" among other statements that made no sense given the context. The officers once again had to stop her from walking into oncoming traffic, and this was when she began to kick them. One more officer came to assist, and she kicked him as well. As a result, Taylor Schabusiness was charged with resisting arrest and battery on a member of law enforcement. She entered a no-contest plea to the battery charge. She was then placed on probation for 3 years and ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Only 2 months later, another officer tried to pull her over for speeding. Rather than pull over, Taylor led the cops on a high-speed chase all throughout town, running red lights and even coming close to hitting a man on a bike. Taylor eventually peeled out into the parking lot of an apartment complex where her father lived. The officers grabbed her once she left her car. Then they searched the vehicle, finding a little black box with a crystal-type powder substance inside, along with a plunger for a syringe. Unsurprisingly, the substance tested positive for methamphetamine. This time, Taylor was hit with charges of knowingly fleeing or eluding an officer, bail jumping, possession of drug paraphernalia, and obstructing an officer. As a deal with prosecutors, she pleaded no contest to the charges of fleeing and obstructing. She got 3 months in jail for the bail jumping and a further 2 years of probation for the other charges. Shortly after, the jail time was reduced to house arrest and Taylor was given a GPS device to wear on her ankle. And then, 1 month later, all hell would break loose. Taylor's husband Warren was soon convicted on federal drug charges and sent back to prison himself. This was after he was found with his own crystal-like substance in his car at a traffic stop in November of 2020. It was believed that he had intent to distribute, which he denied. He claimed that it was all a setup by the police, a conspiracy to get him locked up once again. However, either way, he soon entered a guilty plea and was sent to a maximum security prison in Wisconsin, all set to be there until July of 2024. Taylor had very little contact with her family by this point, and she was living out of her car. That was until she realized she was pregnant. With her husband now being in jail, she started to panic. She contacted her stepmother and started talking to her more often, vocalizing that she could really use some support. In late 2021, her son was born. Tragedy then hit once more when her brother, AJ, was killed in a motorcycle accident at the young age of 22. Shortly after that, Taylor's contact with her family went completely dark. Taylor took solace in drugs, a lot of drugs. She started hanging out with her friends from middle school again, AJ and Shad. They would often go from apartment to apartment, doing drugs, hanging out, and reconnecting. Shad Thyrion was now a 25-year-old man, big into camping, video games, and hanging out with his family. He was also an artist who liked wood carving. He took a keen interest in music as well, posting many music videos online. Taylor became more and more interested in him, eventually coming to cheat on her husband and enter into a relationship with him. This brings us to February 21st, 2022. That night, Taylor cut the GPS device off of her ankle to go hang out with her friends. Taylor got into her car and picked Shad up from his parents' house, taking him over to another mutual friend's apartment. There they smoked weed, hung out, and partied with that friend. Then, both Taylor and Shad started to smoke methamphetamine and inject trazodone, an antidepressant also used to treat anxiety. Taylor and Shad went back to Shad's parents' home while they were away at the time and went down to the basement. They spent the night there together, smoking some more and getting more physical. It seems that Taylor and Shad were pretty big fans of autoerotic asphyxiation, often choking each other as a form of foreplay. This time around, they chose to use a metal chain to get the job done. This was something that they had done numerous times before, being nothing out of the ordinary. Taylor put the chains around Shad's neck as usual, but this time things were going to play out a little differently. While Shad laid face down on the bed, Taylor, in her own words, went crazy. Despite the fact that Shad was obviously in a lot of real pain, struggling, turning purple, and coughing up blood, she still didn't stop. Enjoying the act too much to quit, Taylor strangled him in this manner for an excruciating 3 to 5 minutes as Shad slowly passed away. Taylor then continued to use his body to pleasure herself for a while afterwards. Then she went into the kitchen and grabbed a set of knives, even a butter knife, as she wanted to keep all of Shad's body parts for herself. She got onto the bed and started with his head. After the removal, she cuddled with the rest of him for quite a while. She would later report that she was very excited by all of this. She then took to cutting apart the rest of what was left while enjoying herself, later saying that she was, quote, sucking and cutting at the same time. She even used a particular toy in his orifices while doing so. After hours and hours of this, it was now in the early morning. Taylor had gotten cuts all over her hands as she sloppily divided the body up into parts. Around this time, her high began to wear off and she started nodding off, having to force herself to stay awake and finish. During this time, Shad's parents came home and started settling down upstairs. Taylor did her best to remain quiet while she continued her work. She collected Shad's blood into a bucket, which she then used to shower with. She took his male parts and his head and threw them into a bucket, which she then covered with a towel and left at the bottom of the stairs. Taylor, in her own words, got lazy and gave up on cutting up the rest. Meaning to grab the bucket, she forgot and only ended up grabbing one of Shad's legs and taking it with her as she left the home. At around 3 a.m., Shad's mother decided to come downstairs to look for him as she hadn't really heard a peep from him all night. She went down into the basement to look for him, and while she didn't find him, she was perplexed to see a bucket at the bottom of the stairs for some reason. This bucket had a towel draped over the top, and when she removed the towel, she looked inside to see a human head. As she panicked, her boyfriend called 911. The police came out to the home that cold, quiet morning. They entered into the house where Shad's mother directed them to the bottom of the stairs. One officer found the bucket, causing him to respond with shock and disgust as he called his fellow officer down to come take a look. They looked around the rest of the basement, finding the bed along with a large blood stain. In shock, they wandered around the rest of the basement for a while, all while calling for backup multiple times. They found the rest of Shad's body inside of plastic bags and cardboard boxes around the basement and the inside of a minivan outside the home. After talking to Shad's mother, the police quickly came to believe that Taylor might be a likely suspect in this murder. They were able to track her down to a home on Eastman Avenue. She was sitting there in her minivan with her hands all chopped up and her sweater covered in blood. When the police talked to her, she lamented that she had forgotten Shad's head back at the home. Taylor was swiftly arrested and charged with murder, mutilation of a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault for what she had done to the body. Her bail was set at a sky-high amount of $2 million. Taylor was taken in for an interrogation in which she willingly told the officers about everything that had happened. She told them in excruciating detail what she had done, saying that she could still feel his heart beating as she choked him but didn't want to stop as she was too excited.
But when did you start, cutting up his body?
I don't know, like almost right away. I was sucking and cutting at the same time.
She claimed that she started to black out, but woke up and, because she was, quote, already this far, she decided to go ahead and finish him off. She said that she just wanted to see what would happen.
I just didn't stop. I don't know why. I didn't stop. I felt bad because I'm like, damn, he's gonna be the reason after this. I'm like, might as well just kill it.
She asked the detectives if they ever experienced the feeling where they loved something so much that they wanted to kill it, saying that it was something she experiences often.
You ever love something so much that you kill it? Like, it happens to me. That's the feeling that I have. I love something so much that I kill it. Like, I love it so much, and then I kill it. That's what happens to me.
She then laughed, telling the police that they would have fun trying to find all of the organs. Shad's mother, devastated, started a GoFundMe page to help out with housing arrangements, transportation, and funeral expenses after the crime. Taylor was taken into jail to await her trial. In July, Taylor Schabusiness finally went to trial. The court proceedings were nothing short of unusual as Taylor would laugh and smirk at the gruesome details of what she had done. Along with her attorney, Quinn Jolly, she submitted a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity on September 1st of 2022. While her lawyer pointed out that Taylor had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder in the past and that she had been treated for mental health issues since the 7th grade, a physician appointed by the court found that she was able to stand trial. In February of 2023, Taylor became a national spectacle when she lashed out and physically attacked her own lawyer in court. This was after Jolly requested that the trial date be pushed back so that more experts could further investigate whether or not she was competent to stand trial. She jumped on him at that point, causing a county sheriff's officer to tackle her to the ground and pin her down. While nobody was injured, Quinn Jolly was understandably done with the case at this point. Minutes after, he requested to be removed from the case. This was granted, and he was replaced by Christopher Froelich. From then on, Taylor would appear in court in a spit hood. News media asked why this was the case and received no answer, but the answer is kind of self-evident. Spit hoods are given to those who are seen as having a chance of spitting on or biting others. The hood was given to her because of her behavioral issues and the danger she posed to those around her, including her own lawyers. A forensic psychologist, Diane Litton, said that she witnessed Taylor's dangerous temper firsthand when she met with her. She said that Taylor not only refused to speak to her about the case, but she also threw a chair at her. She came to believe that Taylor suffered from what are called command hallucinations, auditory hallucinations that seem to give orders to those who hear them that caused her to hurt herself and others. Diane Litton testified in court that Taylor had quite the fascination with Jeffrey Dahmer, even coming to believe that she was in a relationship with him despite the fact that he had died before she was even born. Police had found numerous search terms related to Dahmer on her phone, including such gems as Jeffrey Dahmer walking into court all sexy, and Jeffrey Dahmer's butt. Not only that, she was searching up the KKK and trying to find out what the definition of a cadaver was. While those search terms were admissible in court, her searches involving Satanism were not. Litton said that, in her opinion, she doesn't believe that Taylor was fit to stand trial. This was because she couldn't participate in her own defense and evidently didn't understand the criminal process. Nevertheless, the trial proceeded. The Brown County Circuit Court Judge, Thomas Walsh, ruled that Taylor was competent enough to stand trial. The jury was left to listen as Taylor's graphic murder was described, ending with Taylor's own interrogation footage where she not only fully admitted to the crime, but admitted that she enjoyed it very much.
You said that she played with his penis after he was dead.
Oh, yeah.
Was it erect?
It was half.
Yeah.
It was like half hard while I was still sucking while he was dead. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I was severing his head while I was doing that too. Yeah. When I was dismembering the body, there was. I mean, I'm going like this with a knife, so there's blood fucking going everywhere. Sorry.
His face was all purple.
And it still didn't stop. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the fuck. And
And you also said that you enjoyed it, right? And I enjoyed it.
oh yeah.
While Taylor's defense was still that she was not guilty by reason of insanity, the prosecutors focused on information that suggested that the crimes were indeed premeditated. The Dane County Medical Examiner, Dr. Vincent Tranquita, gave his own testimony about the murder, saying, "We have decapitation, we have dismemberment, we have the transection of the torso. Subsequently, internally, the body has been eviscerated. In other words, we have entered inside the body through various cuts through the abdomen and between the ribs where the victim's organs have been removed, largely one by one." He even added that one of Shad's feet had been shoved up into his chest cavity and that his back had the skin completely removed as the jurors stood revolted. Taylor's husband Warren, still in jail, sent a letter saying that he felt his wife was not to blame for Shad's murder, but instead the blame should be placed on the drugs that were given to her that night. He wrote, "I know what she's being accused of is not who she is. Not only has her addiction played a big role, but so does her mental background as well as postpartum depression. I just want my wife to get help, professional help, because it's what she deserves. Like I said, my prayers go out to my wife. I love her more than anything in this world, and this will never change no matter what." And he did stay by her side, offering his moral support throughout the entire trial, seemingly unswayed by her infidelity and crimes. Taylor's friend, AJ, gave his testimony as well.
Yes,
And how do you know her?
since middle school.
Similar to Shad.
Yes.
Did you remain kind of friendly with Taylor as well?
It was like a week after, I think it was, so it was in February. No, I had vacation in June, but I don't remember. I'm sorry. I have like a lot of like mental problems. I was going to the Eastman apartment buildings because that's where I knew Taylor was at the time. And ironically, the same day that I went there, the police were knocking on my door, specifically.
During the trial, Taylor's father, Arturo, was finally given a 12-year sentence and thrown into prison for his previous assaults on his child victim himself. Strangely enough, the lawyer of his victim was Christopher Froelich, the same lawyer that was supporting Taylor now. Christopher Froelich brought Arturo in as a character witness for Taylor, and funnily enough, he arrived in the same orange jumpsuit and chains that his daughter was wearing. Taylor's grandmother, Arturo's mother, also showed up to the hearing, where it was revealed that she was now taking care of Taylor's son, now 2 years old, and was in the process of adopting him. Arturo mainly spoke of Taylor's troubled past, her mother's passing, and her relationship with drugs. He largely blamed Taylor's drug use on her husband, who he claimed exposed her to them. He, himself in shackles for assaulting a child, having no concept of irony, called Warren a fucking loser before he was ultimately taken out of court and back to jail.
Yeah, and she was doing really well there too, until her boyfriend/husband got out of jail. That turned everything upside down.
What was the drug?
Meth, heroin, whatever else. I don't know.
Marijuana?
Yeah, I don't know. The kid was already doing that shit before, and just a fucking loser, and he got my daughter involved in that shit.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Nothing else.
In the end, on July 26th of 2022, it only took the jury a little over 30 minutes to convict Taylor on all counts. Those were counts of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. The next day, they also rejected her insanity plea as well. Shad Thyrion's father, Michael, told Taylor that he forgave her for what she did in a statement to the court. He said, "Taylor, I forgive you for what you did to my son. You made a bad choice. I'm going to miss Shad. He was a wonderful child too. I believe everybody makes bad choices, maybe not to this scale. It does no good to hate you. I know you've got a heart, got a mind." The judge, Walsh, wouldn't be quite as forgiving in his final statement to the court before handing down his sentence in September of 2023. He said, "The offense in this case can't be overstated. You seem to run out of superlatives. Where the victim's remains are cut up, these actions are foreign. They shock the community. There aren't really words for it." He asked Taylor if there was anything she would like to say in response. She responded simply, "No, there isn't." And that was that. Taylor Schabusiness was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Taylor's attorney filed a notice of intent to seek post-conviction relief through her attorney, stating that they plan to appeal both the judgment and the sentence. Taylor was taken into prison where she smirked for the camera in 3 new mugshots. Records show that she was taken from the Brown County Jail, where she was residing alongside her father, and into the Taycheedah Correctional Institution. This is a maximum security prison that houses only female inmates, located about 50 miles north of Milwaukee. Taylor's child now has a different last name than her and currently resides in Texas with her grandparents, much like she herself did as a teen. Taylor will be spending out the rest of her days at the Taycheedah Correctional Institution, given that her appeal fails, which seems more than likely. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found the content interesting, please give it a like as it helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. If you're interested, go ahead and check me out on any of the podcast platforms. I upload the same episodes there as well. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. There you can see updates and find out if anything has ever happened to this channel. If you want, I always appreciate it when people show their support on Patreon, so if you want to see videos early, ad-free, and uncensored, just check out my Patreon account in the link below. Channel memberships are back up too, and there you can get all the same perks as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.